enjoyed the training, the preparation, the designing of the fights. It's a creative process.
Jason Statham is an icon of invincibility, a star with a fortune built on being unbreakable. But the most defining moment of his life had no cameras rolling for a blockbuster scene.
I'm driving a big 3-ton flatbed truck. Everybody's supposed to get on the back, slide. That whole little poster is supposed to be on the back of the truck. Yeah. And I said, before they get on, let me just do a little test drive.
It was the instant a 3-ton truck's brakes failed, plunging him into the Black Sea and trapping him in a watery grave.
The truck hits the water just slams me back, and we just like sinking fast, straight to the bottom.
The world was sold the story of a miraculous escape, another chapter in the legend of his toughness. What they were never told was the real story, a crisis forged by on-set tragedy, private heartbreak, and the terrifying truth that his indestructible image was a lie that almost cost him his life. To understand the accident that nearly ended it all, you must first understand the man who built the myth he was desperate to protect. From hunger to Hollywood. Jason Statham's story began not under the dazzling lights of Hollywood, but on the damp, cold streets of Shirebrook, Derbyshire. Born on July 26, 1967, he entered a world that demanded toughness long before it offered tenderness. His father, Barry, was a man who did whatever it took to keep food on the table, miner, painter, and street seller by day, a pub singer by night. From a young age, Statham learned that survival was not a choice, it was the only option. He followed his father through the chilling markets, selling cheap jewelry and perfume to strangers who rarely met his eye. This life of hustle didn't just teach him how to sell, it forged in him a relentless drive and an intimate understanding of life's unforgiving nature. This was the foundation of the man the world would one day see as invincible. He desperately sought an escape, a way to channel his raw energy into something more. He found it not in a ring, but in the water. At age 12, he began training as a diver, dedicating himself to the silent, disciplined art of falling with grace. It was a late start. Most of his competitors had been training since they were 5, but he attacked it with ferocious determination, staying long after others had gone home, climbing back to the board again and again while the janitor shut off the lights. For 10 years, he sacrificed everything, his world shrinking to a few meters of air and water. In 1990, his hard work paid off when he represented England at the Commonwealth Games, leaping from the 10-meter board before the world. For a moment, it seemed the boy from the coal-stained town might rise all the way to the Olympics. But in 1992, his dream shattered. He missed the British Olympic team by a single place. One heartbeat between almost and never. 10 years of sacrifice vanished beneath the still surface of the water. The defeat was crushing, but it didn't break him. Instead, it hardened him, teaching him a lesson that would define his life. Endurance, not just effort, is what separates survivors from victims. The boy who once dove into freezing water now dove headfirst into life itself, carrying the ghost of that failure not as a wound, but as armor. While the world saw his successes behind the scenes, this pattern of pushing himself to the absolute limit was quietly setting the stage for a future crisis. His break came unexpectedly. While training, he was spotted by an agency scouting for athletes with authentic grit. Soon he was modeling for brands like Levi's and French Connection, who wanted men who looked like they'd actually lived. It was through a modeling contact that he met a young director named Guy Ritchie, who was casting for his first film, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Ritchie wasn't looking for an actor. He was looking for truth. When Statham told him stories from his days as a street hustler, Ritchie knew he'd found his man. He didn't have to act. He had lived the part. The film was a smash hit. And suddenly, the boy from Shirebrook was the heartbeat of a new kind of British action cinema. 2 years later came Snatch, where he starred alongside Brad Pitt, and his fame skyrocketed. But it was 2002's The Transporter that turned Jason Statham into an international superstar. It was here that he made a fateful decision. He would perform all of his own stunts. He trained for months, mastering martial arts and refusing a stunt double. "If I get hurt," he said, "at least it's honest." And he did get hurt. Torn ligaments, bruised ribs, a shoulder that still clicks today. Each injury was a testament to his authenticity, but also a deposit into a bank of pain that his body would one day force him to reckon with. While the world cheered for the hero on screen, the man behind the performance was becoming addicted to the risk, blurring the line between character and reality. As his professional life exploded, his private world began to implode. For years, he was in a serious relationship with model and TV darling Kelly Brook. She had seen him long before the spotlight did, and for a time, they were inseparable. But success has a cruel way of changing the air between two people. His career sent him to film sets across the globe, while hers kept her in the blinding lights of London's media scene. The distance grew, and soon, the headlines came. She had left him for another actor, Billy Zane. The news didn't just break his heart, it crushed him publicly. He was replaced while he was still loyal, a humiliation that he met with a stoic, deafening silence. He didn't lash out. He retreated inward, drowning his heartbreak the only way he knew how: through motion. He trained harder, took on more dangerous roles, and let the bruises from his stunts cover the wounds no one could see. The looming shadow of his physical risks grew darker. Fueled now by a private agony he refused to share with the world. He was building an empire of invincibility, but it was built on a foundation of pain, a secret that was becoming more dangerous with every film. The price of invincibility. By the early 2000s, Jason Statham was no longer just a movie star. He was a global brand, an icon of indestructibility. This was his absolute apex. He had conquered Hollywood on his own terms, standing shoulder to shoulder with his childhood heroes in the Expendables franchise, a series that became a thunderous celebration of action cinema. He then entered the high-octane world of Fast and Furious, playing the formidable villain Deckard Shaw, a character so compelling that fans couldn't help but root for him. The films were not just hits, they were cultural phenomena, grossing billions of dollars worldwide and cementing his status as one of the most bankable names in the industry. With a net worth soaring past $100 million, the boy from the cold streets of Shirebrook was now living a life beyond his wildest dreams. His public image was flawless, a man of immense wealth, discipline, and absolute control. He was the hero who could drive through fire, leap from buildings, and walk away from any explosion without a scratch. He was, in the eyes of the world, invincible. But behind this carefully crafted facade of steel, the first cracks were beginning to show. The relentless pressure to perform bigger, more dangerous stunts was taking a silent, heavy toll. This hidden crisis, long foreshadowed by his own choices, erupted into a devastating reality in 2011 during the filming of The Expendables 2 in Bulgaria. On a day that began with blue skies and laughter between takes, tragedy struck. A stunt explosion near a lake went off seconds too early, a horrific miscalculation that tore through the mountain air like a crack in time itself. When the smoke cleared, the crew was left in a state of stunned, silent disbelief. A young, promising stuntman named Kun Liu, just 26 years old, had been killed. For Statham, this was not a distant headline. It was a deeply personal fracture. He had been nearby, rehearsing a scene. He had likely spoken to the young man that very morning. Now, he was gone. In the aftermath, the studio machine moved on. But something inside Statham changed forever. He had built his career on the very risks that had just claimed a life right in front of him. The weight of that reality reportedly settled deep within him, a profound sense of guilt and mortality that he buried beneath his stoic exterior. He gave one brief, solemn statement to the press. "We lost one of us. To the world, it was a tragedy. But for Statham, it was a ghost. A permanent, invisible reminder that the line between cinematic action and real-life consequence was terrifyingly thin, and that the price of entertainment was sometimes paid in blood. The Invincible Man now carried a secret he could never speak of, the knowledge that the very work that made him a hero had also made him a witness to a death he couldn't prevent. This haunting experience was a dark prelude to the crisis that would bring him to the absolute brink. The core reveal of his hidden vulnerability would come 3 years later, in 2014, during the filming of The Expendables 3, once again in Bulgaria. It was a blinding summer noon by the Black Sea. Statham was behind the wheel of a 3-ton truck, a rusty, monstrous machine he had insisted on driving himself for a key stunt. It was meant to be routine: drive, brake, stop. He trusted his body, his reflexes, his control more than any machine. Cameras rolled, engines roared. For a single heartbeat, everything was perfect. And then, it wasn't. The brakes failed. In one horrifying instant, time snapped. The truck, refusing to slow, jerked violently, its tires screaming against the asphalt as it hurtled toward the edge of a pier. On the shore, someone shouted, "Brakes!" But the word was swallowed by the rising roar of the engine. Statham's muscles locked, his hands welded to the wheel as he fought a machine that had already sealed his fate. The end of the pier rushed toward him. Beyond it, the sea waited. Black, endless, and indifferent. Then, impact. The barrier exploded into splinters, and the massive truck plunged nose first into the depths of the Black Sea. The world turned into a chaotic vortex of weightlessness and violence. The windshield shattered in a storm of glass as dark, heavy water surged into the cab, swallowing light, sound, and air. Trapped and sinking, his seatbelt wrenched tight against his chest, pinning him to his seat. He tried the door. It was stuck, jammed by the immense pressure. He kicked, his movements slow and clumsy in the suffocating water. Nothing. His breath thinned, turning into a burning memory. For a moment, there was only the terrifying silence that comes just before the end. He reportedly thought of his partner, Rosie, and the life still waiting for him on the other side of the world. Then, instinct took over, raw, primal, and defiant. He slammed his shoulder against the door, once, twice, a crack, then a sliver of light. The door burst open. The current dragged him downward, his lungs on fire. He kicked, fought, and reached for the shimmering silver line of the surface far above. When he finally broke through, the air hit him like a fist. He gasped, a sound so sharp it tore through the stunned silence on the shore. The crew erupted in a wave of panicked voices. Sylvester Stallone was among the first to reach him, sprinting to the edge, shouting his name. Jason Statham, the man who was supposed to be indestructible, staggered out of the water, soaked, trembling, and miraculously alive. He stood there, drenched in salt and disbelief, staring at the sea that had almost claimed him. Later, a visibly shaken Stallone would tell the press, if anyone else had been behind that wheel, they'd be dead. The studio and Statham's team, however, quickly spun the narrative. It became another legend of his toughness, a testament to his real-life action hero status. But this was a lie of omission. The public was never told the full, terrifying truth. This wasn't a stunt gone wrong. It was a catastrophic mechanical failure that should have been fatal. Jason Statham had not performed a death-defying feat. He had survived his own execution. The incident was a traumatic breaking point, a moment that shattered his illusion of control and forced him to confront the terrifying reality that his commitment to authenticity had brought him seconds away from leaving his family without a father. The invincible man had just met his own mortality, and it was a secret he would carry in silence for years to come. The ghost in the machine. The man who emerged from the Black Sea was not the same one who had plunged into its depths. Publicly, the story of the failed stunt was spun into another chapter of the Jason Statham legend. He had faced death and walked away, not with a scratch, but with a story that made him seem even more indestructible. His brand, paradoxically, had never been stronger. The incident was a marketing gift, proof that their action hero was the real deal. But privately, the fallout was a silent, creeping ghost that would redefine the rest of his life. He returned to the set of the Expendables 3 the very next day, bruised and quiet, slipping back into character as if nothing had happened. The crew, taking his lead, pretended life hadn't just flinched, but something profound and permanent had shifted within him. He had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had stared back. This invisible wound was torn open again just a few months later by a tragedy that shook the entire industry. On November 30th, 2013, his friend and Fast and Furious co-star, Paul Walker, was killed in a horrific car crash. The news was a gut punch. Walker was the heart of the franchise, a man known for his warmth and kindness. For Statham, who had just stepped into that cinematic family, the loss was devastating. He had just survived a freak accident involving a vehicle, and now his new friend was gone in one. The two events, the death of Kun Lu and Paul Walker, and his own near drowning, formed a dark trinity of trauma. The world of make-believe danger had viciously collided with real, irreversible loss. The message from the universe was brutally clear. You are not invincible. No one is. This was the turning point. The man who had once drowned his sorrows in motion now sought refuge in stillness. His response to this internal crisis was not to lash out or break down, but to build a fortress. He began a conscious, deliberate retreat from the edge, pulling back from the precipice he had lived on for so long. The foundation of this new life was his relationship with model Rosie Huntington Whiteley. She wasn't just his partner, she became his anchor in the storm. Their life together, far from the chaotic glare of Hollywood, became his sanctuary. When their son, Jack, was born in 2017, followed by their daughter, Isabella, in 2022, the transformation was complete. Holding his children, he felt a quiet clarity he had never known. No role, no premiere, no paycheck could ever outweigh the meaning of home. The daredevil, who once risked it all for the perfect shot, was replaced by a father haunted by the thought of what he stood to lose. This newfound perspective began to shape his professional life. While he never stopped performing, his approach changed. He became a quiet but fierce advocate for the stunt community, pushing for greater recognition and safer conditions on set. Having witnessed the ultimate price paid by one performer and having nearly paid it himself, he understood their sacrifice in a way few leading men ever could. It was a form of silent atonement, a way to honor the ghosts he carried. The media narrative remained fixated on his tough guy image, but behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding. He was reportedly more meticulous, more questioning of the risks, turning down sequences he felt crossed the line from daring to reckless. The man who once said, "If I get hurt, at least it's honest," now understood that some truths weren't worth dying for. The invincible hero was slowly being replaced by a pragmatic survivor. Years later, the true gravity of what he endured was finally put into perspective, not by Statham, but by Sylvester Stallone. In an interview, Stallone reiterated with chilling certainty that the accident should have been fatal. "He faced death," Stallone said bluntly. "He was in that truck, underwater, for a good minute or two. If anyone else had been in that situation, they would have been dead." Stallone's words exposed the truth that the studio and Statham himself had so carefully downplayed. It wasn't a close call, it was a statistical miracle. This final, chilling detail reveals the true nature of the man Statham became after the fall. His continued public silence about the psychological toll of that day isn't a mark of his toughness. It's the sacred boundary around a trauma he has no desire to exploit. He buried the fear, not out of denial, but out of a deep-seated need to protect the peace he had fought so hard to find. The world still saw the Man of Steel, but the truth was far more complex. Beneath the armor was a man who had learned the hardest lesson of all. True strength isn't about never breaking. It's about having the wisdom and courage to never let yourself be broken again. Jason Statham's legacy is not that of the indestructible hero, but of the profoundly human survivor who paid the price for that image. He built an empire on the illusion of being unbreakable, a myth forged in discipline and pain. But that illusion was shattered by real-world tragedy and the terrifying silence of being trapped in a sinking truck, seconds from death. The shocking truth is that the invincibility he sold to the world was a mask for a man who had seen firsthand how fragile life truly is. His greatest performance, therefore, was not a death-defying stunt on camera. It was his quiet decision in the aftermath to protect his family, to choose stillness over speed, and to find peace by letting go of the dangerous legend he worked so hard to create. This leaves us with one question. Was his relentless pursuit of authenticity an act of bravery, or a reckless gamble he was simply lucky to survive? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. For more stories that expose the truth behind the legend, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.